And yeah, this is going to be my second game this week. Again, running with Ajani. This is rather, I think it's almost the exact same list as the one that's been posted in Deck Tech, in the Deck Tech section. There's a video on it. If you're interested in learning a bit more about the deck, other than just looking at the cards, this hand can be a bit stuck with mana. This is double white, I have no white. Yeah, it's pretty cool with Lotus Cobra. But unfortunately, Balmor means I can't really get the ultimate going. It's one of the matchups where the ultimate is just really unlikely to happen because Balmor's going to be attacking me so much that it's going to be really hard to get that off. However, this is a good hand. My normal check of, hey, ramp plus proliferate is here, but honestly, that's probably not what's going to happen in this game. However, Fateful Absence is what keeps this one together, I think. And yet again, my microphone has switched off. So, I'm going to try and do my best in post, yet again. I'm going to really have to find a solution for this. But anyway, I forgot what I was saying before. But the hand, having Paradise Druid is pretty nice. Flooding a little bit at the moment, don't have too much to do. Also playing the Maulfist Revolutionary is just a 3-3 with Trample at the moment. The Proliferation doesn't really have any synergy unless I can get Ajani off on the -3, put some +1/+1 counters on some creatures, and then grow one of them. As Revolutionary isn't a true proliferation effect, it is just one target. I still justify that running that in the deck because game plan A is still going to be trying to ultimate Ajani, so a lot of the time the early proliferation only needs to actually hit one target, so the card is just better Bloom Hulk if in that case, where instead of paying 4 mana for a 4/4 with proliferate and paying 3 mana for a 3/3 trample that does the same thing, it's just a little bit easier on the curve. I can combine it with something on turn 5 with, say, Fateful Absence rather. Here, not as good. I'm considering now, do I -3 on the Paradise Druid, giving my opponent the opportunity, unfortunately covering the loyalty of Ajani. I didn't realise I might have to change that later next time I do recording, with the face cam there, but, well, it's stuck there for now. But it comes down on foil loyalty, so I'm thinking, hey, if I -3, it goes down to 1. They can just poke that very easily with something like the Mausoleum Wanderer there. But then I do get a beta in the Paradise Druid, it becomes a 5/4, and I'm going to try and race them on the ground. There's not much else I can do against Balmor. I can't just sit back and try and turtle around, because the deck isn't built to turtle around. I do not have really defensive creatures, especially against Balmor, which is all about having evasive threats. I just have a bunch of stompy units at the top end and more planeswalkers I want to try and ultimate. So, the game plan here is, yeah, just get big on the ground. The ground creatures' stats are often going to be better than evasive creature stats for balance reasons. And so if they are all in the air, I need to be all in the ground. But here, yeah, instead I'm choosing, hey, I think Ajani going up to 5 loyalty can either buy me some time and take some stuff from their hand, like there we see the +4/+0 trick played there. Just another resource spent to get rid of Ajani there. Otherwise, I would get extra value, and if they ignore it completely, then next turn I was planning on using the -3 and getting some more beef on the board. Noticing opponent is stuck on 2 mana, which is extremely helpful. There's another cool thing with Revolutionary and just any proliferate targets is you might have noticed I've drawn Dusk Dawn in my hand, which destroys all creatures with power 3 or less. 3 or greater. So it's a nice tech piece because I have a lot of ramp creatures that are under that requirement. And if I am against especially when Joda was very, very popular, that thing just single-handedly won the game against Joda decks. You play it always wipes their board because their board is going to be massive. And then it should be a very easy win afterwards. But it also applies to other mid-range decks that are more all-in on big value creatures. Because that's not what I'm doing here. I'm doing that with big value planeswalkers, which don't get hit by Dust Storm. So there is a cool play where I can put another counter on Dorat, make it 3 power, but I decided not to because that's probably going to get buffed from spells they cast anyway, and that's exactly what happened. Now I can cast Dusk to just destroy the Dorat and the 3/3, but I'd rather attack first because otherwise I'm missing 3 damage. And as I said, it very much is a race on the ground. I can play Lotus Cobra here for 2 mana. I have a land drop to make, so with the land drop I get 1 mana from the Lotus Cobra plus the mana from the land drop, and then I have the 2 left open plus Paradise Druid, there's 5 mana left. So what I could do is I could go to combat, use Dusk to effectively trade the 3/3 and the 4/4 away, losing a card in the process, and then passing the turn back. But instead I chose, attacking with Paradise Druid. It's a bit more damage, but I completely forgot here. Mausoleum Wanderer says you can sacrifice it and make me pay the tax equal to its power, which is 1. So quite an elementary mistake there from me. I was quite embarrassed by that as well, considering I've played extensively with this with that card in Explorer, both with and against it as well. And it wasn't that hard to just keep lose 2 damage there, keep the Paradise Druid on tap, so that wasn't an option. And now punished for it big time, as I've gotten hit down to 5. Now both Dorat is already a lethal attacker, and Balmor potentially is lethal, which is a bit scary. Kind of saved by the top deck there. The Sarah Paragon, very good card defensively against other flying creatures, just because it can dive in front of their stuff, if not anything else. I do have Fateful Absence just in case as well, so unless they can make their Balmor really big, I can chump the Balmor and then Fateful Absence the Dorat or the Sprite Dragon, or Fairy something, I can't remember. Unfortunately, Finale of Promise is actually lethal here, so Ancestral Anger plus these 2 spells will make Balmor 5 power, and then they find the deal 4 damage to any target, and then deal 2 damage to or target creature, and then deal 2 damage to one of your own creatures. Remove Sarah Paragon, which clears the way for both lethal attackers. But as it always pays not to concede, because your opponent can make mistakes, and this time they chose to buff the Dorat for 1 power instead. And unfortunately for the opponent, their Balmor stops at 4 power when they could have had it at 5. And yeah, so even though I made the earlier mistake, it's the last blunder that counts. That's more of a chess term, but that was the case here as well, as they were left wide open on the swing back for lethal. Coming into game 2. After a very close game previously, now we are on the draw, and looking at what would normally be quite the ideal hand, with ramp with the Elvish Mystic, proliferation from the Poland Bright Druid, and some protection from Heroic Intervention, and just a nice card in the shape of Sarah Paragon. It's not the clearest keep, of course, against normal, just dirtily any decks. This hand is usually pretty good, because game plan A is just play Ajani as fast as possible, hopefully on turn 3 for 4 mana, and then +1, and then proliferate, and then ultimate on turn 4. This hand can do that. However, not against Balmor. Balmor, as I might have mentioned earlier, is very aggressive with evasive creatures, so it's not like I'm going to be blocking them, and they can just take care of Ajani before I even get there at all. So it looks like the game plan in this sort of matchup is to be bigger than the opponent, race them on the ground, and Elvish Mystic is still good, a good lead. Just any ramp is still very good. A little bit stuck with white sources at the moment, but Paradise Druid does get me out of that. And an interesting draw here with Kami of Bamboo Groves. My original plan was, hey, I'm going to spend this turn to look with Fable Passage for a a white mana source, and then I can play Paradise Druid with the white mana source to cast Serra Paragon, which is just going to be very... My mic, even in recording, cut off, so it's just talking about. Serra Paragon just very good being a flying blocker. Good because a lot of the evasive creatures that Balmor has access to have evasion in the form of flying. But instead, yeah, looking to hand dump as much as possible. I think the main consideration there was to try and guarantee that I can play Serra Paragon next turn, as it is quite effective at blocking, as well as keeping up something like Heroic Intervention, which means I can block with the assurance that it's going to be fine, and if the opponent tries to put in resources into their creatures to punch through Serra Paragon, I can just give it an indestructible, potentially eat their creatures, and then if not, they've hand dumped a bunch, and I've still soaked up some damage with the Serra Paragon, and it's still around afterwards. But this is the more upside play that I went for, I think. If I do draw land, then my next turn lines up really nicely. If I don't, I can still play Ajani. Get some counters on the ground, and be aggressive with my mana dorks, as if I can put pressure on them, then they can't put pressure on me as easily, without sacrificing their life total. So yeah, didn't see a threat in the first spell they cast, as it's just a cantrip, but the Reckless Charge being cast twice off the Dreadhorde Arcanist and the Hardcast does put me down to 18, which is quite a big swing, but rewarded for that play with a land on top, so now I can go cast that for 4. Sacrifice the Fable Passage because I have 4 lands. I can get the untapped white source to play Serra Paragon, as well as holding up the Heroic Intervention as protection. And then the turn afterwards, I can look at buffing my board. Can't actually remember if I go for... Yeah, I think I go for Serra Paragon. There's also a nifty interaction with the Serra Paragon where, because it's any target permanent in your graveyard, or you may play any permanent in your graveyard with mana value 3 or less, it does hit stuff like Fable Passage, which is kind of cute, as I can recast that if I miss a land drop from the top next turn, and I will gain 2 life off it going into the graveyard and then getting exiled from the Serra Paragon's ability as well. But yep, here I go for Ajani for immediate pressure. It also means I can hold up Heroic Intervention after hitting them, because the -3 gives vigilance to the creatures I target, and I targeted all 3. So the mana dorks still allow me to hold up Heroic Intervention. I did have the opportunity to play the Pollenbright Druid and then just proliferate, put Ajani up a little bit, and grow the board a bit as well. But I think in this position I'm far enough ahead that I want to play as safely as I can. And playing the Pollenbright Druid means I could be in trouble if they have a whole bunch of interaction from my creatures that I've just spent a little bit of resources trying to pump up, and Paradise Druid loses the hexproof once it gets tapped, so if they have something like Lightning Bolt for that, I'd just be losing that, and I was much happier to hold up her intervention. However, playing the Druid is probably a completely fine thing to do that turn anyway, and just hit the opponent for a lot more instead. But this means I can also get a very safe block on the Dreadhorde Arcanist, with the knowledge that Heroic Intervention just protects all my creatures, especially now that they have tapped out. Heroic Intervention is effectively free. I'm already committed to the block, and it's just trading protection spell for creatures feels pretty good against Balmor, which is going to be very creature light and have a lot of burst damage spells in hand. So if you can keep whistling down their creatures, then a lot of the hands are going to be dead a lot of the time. Playing Sarah Paragon now, just to just to get the board onto, or the body onto the board. There was the option to play the Fable Passage from the graveyard instead, which probably, well, I couldn't do that if I wanted to keep the Paradise Druid untapped for an attack, because if I tap the Paradise Druid for white mana before I play the Fable Passage, in order to actually cast the Sarah Paragon, then I lose a point of damage, right? Because I have 6 mana total no matter what I do. I have to tap the Elvish Mystic in this line, and in the other line I have to tap the Paradise Druid. The Paradise Druid attacks with 1 more point of damage than the Elvish Mystic. So I'm sacrificing 1 point of life on the opponent for 2 points of life for me, if I do that. And I want to beat down the opponent as fast as possible before they can get just a massive chain of burst damage spells onto their creatures to kill me from 18, which can very much happen. And here Fable Passage takes me up to 20 anyway. I can just play it now. Smell Fear being a quite nice draw. Another proliferate target that can potentially get rid of another blocker from the opponent. The only consideration here is, do I want to play Ajani for completed or not? Or do I just want to play Smell Fear and attack with everything anyway? Ultimately, I choose to cast Ajani without the completed cost, so I can immediately -3, and then I can Smell Fear afterwards, and then just grow everything really big. The other option I had, if I cast Ajani for 5 mana using the completed Phyrexian mana for 2, then I don't have to tap the Paradise Druid when I cast Smell Fear, which means I have an additional attacker, as well as keeping the Paradise Druid's hexproof, because this way I have to tap it. So if they have something like Lightning Bolt, I'm incredibly punished here. So in the face cam, that was what my reaction was for, is hey, I'm completely open if they have a Lightning Bolt, and complete punishes this very sloppy play, because I very much didn't need to do this. Or in the very least, I could Smell Fear with something like Sarah Paragon and choose not to fight in the first place. Or just, yeah, Sarah Paragon, because it doesn't die to a Lightning Bolt. But as it is, they have a pump spell instead. And looking at the attacks now, I'm attacking for 13, so they have to put something in front of the Sarah Paragon so they can go to 1 life. Conveniently, they already have a 6/1 blocker for the Sarah Paragon, so they can just put that in front. And it's still looking unlikely for them to burst me down from 20 life here. During the game, I thought if they had a double power spell, it plus double strike spell, that could be enough. But as it turns out, that's only 16 damage. I thought it was 20 damage exactly during the game, and even a little bit afterwards. But reviewing this game in post led me to realize, hey, that's not actually enough. And so on this board, it's really asking Balmor to defend against 3 creatures, which is never going to be very easy, especially when that deck is already creature light in the first place. Burst spells don't really defend your life total very well. You're meant to be the aggressor. This is not where you want to be with Balmor at all. But Kiln Fiend is a blocker if they have any form of interaction now, or any other blocker. They're not dead. And even looking to attack Ajani here, which means they at least have 2 pieces of interaction, or something that can untap their creature, sort of give pseudo vigilance. But here, I want to attack with the Elvish Mystic here, so I'm not going to tap it just to play Ajani with foil loyalty. I'm just going to cast it for its completed cost, draw hopefully into some more action if things don't go my way, and they do have all the interaction they need to survive here. And then if they have something to punch through and put pressure on me as well. So just minimizing the outs the opponent could possibly have. Looking for a quantity of creatures rather than quality. It doesn't matter how big they are, as they are on 1 life. But yeah, they have Sure Up here, so they can trade and eat one of the creatures. Not ideal. Of course, ideal would be winning the game on the spot there. But it's still a difficult situation for the opponent. If they want to attack Ajani again, then they need something to block with. Seeking Knowledge comes out, so they're not replaying Balmor. I'm expecting them to just hold Adela's back and block with it, and then try and pump it up. But if that's the case, I'm also hoping to find some more creatures to dump down, threaten that life total with, and go as wide as possible. Opponent deciding what to do. I've had to go back 3 times now, as my microphone keeps cutting out, and I just have big areas of not recording commentary, which has made me quite upset. But anyway, finding Bounty Agent now, so I can play that down. I also have the option to +1 or -3 Ajani at this point. The benefit of using the +3 means that I can potentially buff the Pollenbright Druid out of range of some spell that they could cast on their creature to make it big enough so it can just eat my creature on block. So I want to pump it up a little bit, but I also want to pump up the 1/1 just in case next turn they play Balmor plus something else. They don't just get a free block with it on the 3/3, or on the would-be 1/1, I suppose. So making it a 3/3 so that isn't possible. And here they block, and they do have something to trade with it, but not eat it. So that was pretty good for me. As we'll see, double strike get cast on it eventually. There we go. Critical hit comes down. 3/3 double strike trading for the 5/5, and now Bounty Agent, which means they need to play Balmor plus some interaction for the Bounty Agent to live. And then even if they have that, Balmor is a chump blocker. And here we see Balmor and no land and other spell, so it's just game over.